And we continue to reflect on the life and legacy of the former Deputy President David Mabuza, who passed away yesterday at the age of 64. Mabuza served in various other roles during his long political career before resigning from Parliament in 2023. For more on this, we are now joined by veteran journalist Mondli Makhanya. Mondli, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Some people describing his legacy as complex. From where you are sitting and all of the work that you had done covering Didi Mabuza from his time, also before even becoming the Premier and Chairperson of Mpumalanga. What are your reflections around who Didi Mabuza was?
And good morning from this chilly Johannesburg. Well, Didi Mabuza, people speak about legacies of somebody who was in leadership of the country, in various positions of leadership in the country. But when it comes to David Mabuza, you have to ask yourself, is there actually a legacy? Because there is very little that you can say, okay, this is what he did. We know he ran Mpumalanga with an iron fist. We know that he was very influential in the politics of the ANC. But there isn't really anything that you can say, this is what defines the life and the political life of David Mabuza. I think the most important thing about David Mabuza was the fact that he saved the country from going over the cliff. That intervention of his in December 2017, when the ANC went to conference at Nasrec, and he was supposed to be the kingpin in making sure that the legacy of the corrupt legacy of Jacob Zuma continues in the form of the anointed successor to Jacob Zuma, which would have been Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, would have that she defeats Cyril Ramaphosa and becomes the next president of the ANC and obviously then the next president of the Republic. Then David Mabuza, switching sides, made sure that did not happen. And South Africa, had that happened, South Africa would have gone over the cliff, and we don't know what country would be living in today. And that, for me, was the most important contribution of David Mabuza to the life of South Africa. Other than that, when he became deputy president, as a result of him having switched sides, he was the most low-profile deputy president this country has seen since the dawn of democracy. So we did not know anything about him. He basically disappeared from public life, and he would make the occasional speech here and there. But generally, he played a very, very little to no role in the life of the country once he was in office. And then once he left office, he then disappeared from public life.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, even if you look at the previous conversations and articles around David Mabuza, I just pulled up now something from the Democratic Alliance. The Democratic Alliance notes the appointment of Deputy President David Mabuza by President Cyril Ramaphosa to head up the interministerial task team to oversee South Africa's COVID-19 vaccine rollout. Is that even during that particular period, he was described as the absent Deputy President of the country?
Yes, he was absolutely absent. And and part of the role of the Deputy President as well is that you also you are the leader of government business in Parliament. And even there were complaints about the fact that he was hardly in Parliament. He took long leaves of absence and didn't turn up. And then another role is that you are the head of the National AIDS Council, and then head of the Moral Generation Movement, etc., etc. But even in those roles, he never made any impact. And then came that point when he was, when the country was facing, I think, the biggest crisis the world faced. The world faced the biggest crisis in over a century, and the person who was given that task was just nowhere to be seen. And in fact, it was the president himself, together with the Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, who was basically as Copter minister, he was the head of, she ran the COVID response as well as the health minister and so on. But the deputy president himself was totally absent. And I think, just from a purely personal, selfish point of view, when you are the deputy president, you are the next person in line, and just in terms of ambition, everybody assumes that you would automatically, or kind of like that you stand the best chance of being the next person. So you make the best use of the prominence of your proximity to power. But David Mabuza, it seemed that he was totally relaxed about that. Okay, I probably will not become the next president, so let me enjoy my place in the sun for now. And then then he would take opportunity to, we know now that he had been ill for a long time, but so he took a long 5-year holiday from doing any work. It's, people say do not speak ill of the dead, but that's exactly what David Mabuza did during his time in cabinet.
Yeah. Then there's also the period that happened in 2019 after the elections. The ANC has now this renewal task, and the demand from the ANC and the demand that people had of the ANC was that rid yourself of people that are accused of corruption, because this is now during the New Dawn era of President Cyril Ramaphosa. And the 2019, post the elections, David Mabuza then steps back and says that I don't want to be sworn in as yet as a member of parliament up until the Integrity Commission or Committee of the ANC has cleared his name. But that wouldn't be the only allegations that David Mabuza was facing at the time. There were also allegations that he had a role to play in some of the political killings that were taking place in Mpumalanga.
Alvin, you and I are journalists, so should not be saying this, but there's the unfairness sometimes of the court of public opinion. David Mabuza was always seen as this corrupt person, one of the dirtiest politicians in the country. He was accused of being linked to political killings in Mpumalanga, but nothing ever stuck. There was never any formal investigation by the authorities into his corruption. But there was always just this cloud around him that this man was corrupt. And very few people could actually point to a thing that on September 3, he did 1, 2, 3. In October of that year, he did 1, 2, 3. He's involved in that deal. He's got unexplained wealth. But we all today, as he goes to his grave in the next few weeks or so, in the next week or so, we all believe that David Mabuza was corrupt. But we actually don't know what he did. We know what Jacob Zuma did. We know what a lot of other corrupt people did. But David Mabuza goes to his grave with this cloud hanging over him. But allegations that, I'm not saying that they were never proven, but it's simply that they were never even put to him. He never went to court. The Hawks never visited his home to say, you stole this much money, you engaged in such a deal. The only thing tangible that was ever attached to him was by the environmentalist Fred Daniels, with whom he was involved in a land dispute. But nothing ever was attached to him in terms of corruption. And I think that, it's a real pity. I don't know, even I myself, when I think of David Mabuza, I do think of somebody who was tainted. But for him to have actually taken what we can regard as a principled stance, saying that I don't want to be sworn in until these things have put to me, that until I have been allegations have been put to me and I've answered for myself. I think it was a principled stance for him, and basically risking him taking up his position in national politics. But I think it's just one of those things. When we lob missiles at people, we do need to have really concrete facts around them rather than just merely taint.
Yeah, and I wonder whether his so-called calculated strategy could be behind some of the reasons why we don't really know what role he could have played. Because as I think it was Somatota Mfikeni, Prof. Somatota Mfikeni, who spoke about how he always kept his opponents guessing. And I remember him speaking about the book that he loves dearly, and that is The Art of War.
Yes, if there is anybody in this country who understood the commodity of power, it was David Mabuza. He knew how to play the power game. Right from the time, like long before he entered formal politics in the 1980s, when he was an activist, was involved in teachers' unions and so on, and in progressive politics. He always played the politics very cleverly and rising to basically chairpersons of teacher unions and so on. And when South Africa then kind of like post-1990, when the ANC was now going to be contesting for power, he played that game extremely well and became the most powerful person in his province. And even in national politics, he was the key figure, as we'll all remember, in what was then the so-called Premier League, which involved the premiers of the Free State, Northwest, and Mpumalanga. And that alliance basically was very key to protecting Jacob Zuma from any challenge from anybody. And that Premier League, when it suited him, he broke ranks with that Premier League and went with Cyril Ramaphosa, because that Premier League was supposed to be the vehicle that would deliver Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma presidency. But David Mabuza looked after himself and he said, no, my best chance of going forward is actually to go with the Cyril Ramaphosa slate. And, and it put him in the next, as the number 2 person in the country. Yes, we say he did nothing there. He did do nothing. But the bottom line is he was the second most powerful person in the Republic. And he demolished his opponents in the province, and he ran for 3 terms without being challenged, because he was this extremely powerful human being, and he was a major political strategist. And I think that I said at the beginning that legacy-wise, I don't think he has any legacy, but I think that is something that we will always remember him for, the fact that he knew the political game second to none.